just a cross-section of cell blocks 1, 2, and 3. Those are the ones belonging to 1829. They're all basically exactly the same. So you can see here we're in the corridor, the center corridor. There's also tunnels underneath, used for a variety of purposes. Now you can see how the cells split off either side. They've got those high arch ceilings that are kind of chapel-like. And then the exercise yards immediately behind. They do show the lateral dimensions of the cell, but they're a bit longer, open to the top. The inmates could do whatever exercise can be accommodated out there. They also grow a lot of vegetables, and it seems a fair number of them keep pet rabbits too. I don't know why rabbits, I guess maybe they multiplied quickly. But anyway, about the doors, in a moment you're going to be crossing that brick section right there in order to get to the open cells. That brick bed is recreated to what it would have looked like in 1829, and you'll probably be wondering, like, what's the deal with those little tiny square holes? That's because when the inmate was originally brought in here, they'd come in through the gatehouse, actually be blindfolded, so they'd lose their orientation, then be led into their exercise yard, and then from there into their cell, where they'd be unblindfolded. And so after they were brought in, that back door would be always closed off to them. But that's how the guards, also the chaplains, the doctors, would be able to access them. The inmates were never supposed to be out into the corridors. Instead of ordinary doors, they had these little feeding holes, so the guards could put their meals there when they came through with carts 3 times a day. They do have wooden doors over the front of them. That's because they're located immediately across from each other, and I think if you're telling inmates to be silent, it's probably asking a bit much for them to do that while staring each other in the face. But also, there were iron grates behind those as well, so they're not leaping out as their meals are served. After a couple of years, though, the guards and other people were getting pretty sick of having to go all the way around out back to access the inmates, and so it seems in the 1830s, ordinary doors were added. But a word about these doors, these wooden ones here. When Eastern was abandoned after it closed in 1971, nobody knew it was going to be an historic site. And so people came through to get scrap materials like the metal behind the doors, the lumber. Can't blame them, those are pretty valuable materials. But then later on, Holmesburg Prison closed, or part of it, off of I-95, still in Philly. They had no use for their doors anymore, so they gave them to us. So these are Holmesburg doors, and that's also why the numbers on them are all kind of out of order, in case you're wondering. So that's that. What else? Oh, one of the neatest things about solitary confinement is the demands of the system provoked technological innovation, and that breaks down into heating and plumbing. So as for heating, besides the impracticality of trying to outfit every one of these cells with a fireplace, what's the main hazard of giving an inmate a fireplace?
Burn the place down.
Well, themselves. Now, the building is not very combustible. The stone walls are like 2 feet thick, or 18 inches at the least. But even very early on, it was recognized that it's pretty hard for people to spend 2 years alone. This is actually even a bigger concern for the women inmates here, because they were thought to have weaker natures. There were women here until 1923 when the state facility opened at Muncie. And so they don't want the inmates to be able to injure themselves. Also, I don't really know how the system was considered safe or reasonable, but as you can see, any interactions the inmates will have will be one-on-one in isolated stone confines, so they don't really want them to have weapons against the guards or doctors either. So John Haviland does introduce a steam heating system using various underground furnaces, some narrow vents so the inmates aren't crawling through them, to keep everybody at least like humanely warm when it gets cold out. But plumbing as well. Every cell had its own cold water spigot. Health always was quite high on the list of priorities, given how pestiferous previous prisons had been. But also, there was a symbolic purpose to those spigots as well. Inmates were expected to keep their own bodies and their cells squeaky clean, so it was like their external cleanliness mirrored the internal hygiene they're supposed to be striving for here. But toilets too. 1829, again, every cell had its own. This is like years before even the White House gets them, and definitely the first time this technology had been attempted on anything approaching this scale. Really though, if you think about it, you can't do it any other way. Imagine if everybody has chamber pots. The only way really to manage, well, either they're going to get filthy, or the guards will spend half their day just dealing with chamber pots. But outhouses, the only way really to effectively manage that one is to gather up inmates in large groups several times a day, and that's not very good for solitary confinement, is it? So, therefore, flush toilets. But This was amazingly advanced, but they were brand new technologies and did have a couple of flaws. First, well, the toilets only flushed twice a week. And, I don't know, everybody today has quite a visceral response, I guess. For that, it was good for the 19th century, I suppose, I don't know. But anyway, instead of flushing inside the cells, there's like a big chain that the guard would pull somewhere in the cell block at an appointed time for everything to go at once. But also, this is something that really should have been avoided. Somehow, you'd think you'd know better, but John Haviland got it in his head that underneath these cell blocks, he put the steam heating pipe right next to the sewer pipe. So, yeah, you figured out, right, what happened when they turned the heat on? Yeah, well, I suppose, like solitary confinement, these are lessons learned in the doing anyway. And, prisons, big buildings elsewhere did benefit from what was done at Eastern State. So besides that, one more word about the cells. I know it's kind of hard to assess without yet having entered them, but the cells' dimensions in these blocks are all 8 feet by 12 feet. What do you guys think? Is that big, small, somewhere in the middle?
It's pretty big.
I guess that really does depend on your perspective, doesn't it? If you're in college, maybe that doesn't seem so bad. Probably smaller than you'd want your bedroom to be. But, for cells, actually very generous. Today, the typical inmate cell is maybe 6 by 10. That's purpose-built for 2, and sometimes it's occupied by more because of prison overcrowding. Now, the reason why the cells are this big is obscure, so I'm not going to try to fish it out of you. And that's because the inmates had to have enough space to labor individually. Even as this prison was being built, there was a debate as to whether inmates should or should not work. Some people were like, no, if they're working, they're not repenting. But others said, all right, look, solitary